morning, everybody.
Morning, morning.
Good morning.
How are we? Are we all wonderful on this Monday morning of December? First Monday of December. Is that a good or a bad thing?
It's my
Depends if you're traffic zone.
last work Monday of the year, so yeah.
Last work Monday. You're finishing up. Are you on Friday for the year?
Finished on. It's going to be a 100-hour work week, I suspect. But I finish on Friday for the year. That's the joys of not taking much leave, much to my wife's disdain.
Right. So there's a balance. We can't be too jealous because you have worked all the other 200
a ridiculous amount
days.
of
Yeah. I saw. So everyone else probably has 2 or 3 left, and then we're in the clear, maybe depending on what you do work wise, which would be nice. I'm not going to get that. I normally take 2 or 3 weeks, kind of coming up into the break. I'll try and disappear as early as possible. And then come back at the start of January, because the start of January is quiet. I like the fact that you can actually get a load of stuff done. But no, I was the opposite, Carl. I was overzealous with leave during the year, so I've very few days left to take now, and as a result, Christmas Eve.
I find it really difficult to take time off if all we're going to do is sit at home. If the kids are in school and I'm just sitting here, it's something I need to break myself of in the coming year. But if I'm going to sit here anyway, I might as well sit here and work. Yeah.
I mean, I get it. I get it. About Aidan, Alan, you guys finishing up soon? Finishing up right at the dead?
I've been taking a bunch of days off, some personal leave stuff. The last few weeks, I've been out more than I've been in, and I'm taking 2 days off before Christmas, and then that'll be it.
I think it's not too bad if there's something to do, right? I really don't like the that gap after Christmas and Stephen's Day.
I can tell you how you fill it. I can tell you. You work for a consulting company.
If you say documentation, Aidan, I'll laugh at you. But
no! It's worse than that. It's worse than that. I'm about to make you swear live on air.
Okay, go on.
Microsoft Advanced Specializations.
Oh no. Pass. Thanks. I've enough of those to think about. Pass.
You're never done. There's always the renewal as well.
Yeah. I've a cycle of those coming. The way they sit now, they do 2 years. So you do the audit year 1, you do like are you still there year 2, and then on the 12 months, are you still there? On the 24 month of achieving it, again you do the audit again. So I have a cycle of those coming in 24. So that's can't wait.
Yeah, Module A has changed a lot since I was involved in the last cycle. So we're doing a lot of documentation and pulling things from all over the place.
We only did one of those. When did we have to do a Module A? June. And it's like 90% documentation. But you know what I liked actually? And we're
common across all of them.
Yeah, right. So that's good, right? So you do it once, but we're kind of miles off where we're meant to be here at the moment. But we'll come back. Don't worry, we'll come back on track in a sec.
We'll steer back.
The code part, right? And I know we've a little bit of a code later, but the code part, I found where it looks for how do you deploy certain components.
Yeah.
Like we were able to just kind of walk through a whole load of the templating work that we do by code, and they were like, magic box tick next. It was so much quicker. To the point where there were elements that weren't code, or there were elements that couldn't be code, right? Think of like when you're trying to talk about a process and how slow it is to explain that to someone, coming in, even no matter what way you structure it, to kind of bring them on the journey and process, you're still like, okay, we're 15 minutes into this, and you're just, you're just getting where we start here now, and then we go into this. The code part was just so much more straightforward. Now, I'll be maybe pessimistic or a bit mean and say I don't know how much the auditors understand. So like if I presented a JSON file and said this builds, an enterprise scale landing zone, does a whole load of other stuff, or a PowerShell file, or a HTML file or something, would they be able to go, I don't think it does. Like I don't know how skilled they are to be able to pick something apart. Like it's not like me putting the code in front of you guys and saying, this I promise this HTML file builds an Azure environment. But I do like the fact that you can kind of be a little bit quicker by showing your work, right? If we all remember junior cert maths, show your work.
I suspect, Joe, that if you just downloaded some random Ansible from GitHub and said it's this, this, and this, they'd take your word for it.
Maybe.
Anyway, let's pull this back on.
Yeah,
on track.
So, first up, a reminder of everybody that there is the Just Giving page for the Festive Tech Calendar for the lads. So that has been organized by the guys running the event. Please donate if you can. The fundraiser is, as always, or as it has been the last couple of years, a really, really great initiative. It does very, very well, and that only does well thanks to your support. So please do give if you can, and whatever you can. Be very much appreciated by all organizing and all participating as part of the event. And in line with that, I hope you've been enjoying the content in the last 3 days. I know we're pretty early in the calendar. Yeah. There's a whole load of stuff to come, right? There's another, what have we got? 27 days of content, right? Which is amazing. So keep looking out for stuff that's coming up today and for the rest of the month as well. And a thank you to the guys for organizing this again this year. It is a really, really good event. I think we're back for year. Is this year 3? Year 3 or 4 of doing the AMA, the Irish MVPs?
Yeah.
I really look forward to this one. There's always something unusual that comes out of it. Okay.
I think we're widening the scope a little bit this year, right?
Yes.
Usually it's networking, and now we're like, everything goes. Let's
see what happens. That could be good and bad, Carl, right? Because we've Aidan Flynn on the call, so let's see how it goes. Right. We said we would start with the big elephant in the room this year, which has been AI. And for Azure, I think it's kind of interesting in terms of how it's affecting it or not affecting it, or is like dominating your life or not. So when it comes to that, I suppose there's maybe 2 elements. The Cognitive Service has been around for ages, so it's not really new, maybe depending on what space you work in Azure. And then Copilot, which was only announced at Ignite, so Azure Copilot. Who likes it and who dislikes it? Alan, where are you leaning?
I haven't got access to it yet.
Yeah, same. Yeah. I think I see some of the lads have. As in, did I see Vuk has access to it?
Yeah, I noticed he has a blog, right, about it, or something coming. He said about the access, but yeah, I think some of us are on a list somewhere that we haven't quite got
on the list
on top of yet.
Some magic list. Okay, I mean the demo looks interesting, but then at the same time, I'm like, I don't know if I need it. And I don't know whether that's just because I'm familiar. Like, so is it really going to help someone new? And then how many people are new to Azure anymore? Is maybe where I'm kind of looking at, like from that kind of
lots of people are still new. Even people who are using it for a couple of years are still new, based on my consulting work.
Do you think it'll help?
No. I don't. I honestly don't know. It depends on how good or bad your Google Foo is, I guess. Because for me, that's what Copilot really is 2 things. It's a search engine, but it's also a generator. And those of you who've done a little bit of digging or some training on LinkedIn or whatever will have found, okay, there's training out there on ChatGPT, which is what Copilot is. And you find, okay, there's the interactive, the bot type system, and then there's this generative system where you basically can feed it templates and it can generate code or text for you. But if you're looking to find out how something works or what it does, and you're not getting great results out of Google, because who's using Bing really, then it's going to be good. There's other stuff where it's, I don't know, potentially could help you in figuring out issues or make recommendations or stuff like that. But, I look at that and go, I've already got recommendations.
Yeah.
And half the time they suck. If this thing is now going to echo the noise out of Defender for Cloud,
an advisor and whatever.
Oh my God, I'm going to turn that thing off so fast.
Yeah,
because half the stuff out there is just wrong, or doesn't understand context.
Yeah.
Specifically around Copilot for Azure, do you think?
Yeah.
And we have another topic next about AI in the future of the consultant, so there might be a bit of overlap here. But do you think that some small shops, some small cloud outfits that are exploring the cloud and building their stuff in the cloud might then try and leverage Copilot for Azure more, and even Copilot for the 365 side of things on that topic as well, instead of engaging with consultants?
That's a good question for Alan, actually, because he's dealing in that market.
Yeah,
it's a difficult one. I'm not sure yet. I think the big issue with Copilot for 365 is people won't actually use it unless they're shown how to use it, given some real useful case examples of here's how you can make your job easier, here's how you can be more efficient at things. So I think there's going to be a real training aspect to it. Workshops will be required. I think we've enabled this for all of your accounts now. Here's how you use it. Here's some examples. Here's some use cases.
Costs extra money, right?
Yeah, I think it's $30 per user per month.
And 300 users minimum purchase.
For the moment,
which is
for Copilot, for M365 Copilot.
For small, medium business, that's a significant cost, right?
It's huge.
I mean, it could be. It's definitely going to be. Yeah, it's going to be more than your M365 SKU.
Yeah, and you have to question: is this thing going to be so productive that it's going to be worth that sort of cost?
Oh.
And that's a big question. And right now, it's limited to enterprise agreements and a minimum purchase of 300 users. So that's 2 blockers right there for small medium enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
And even if they opened up to CSP, because of the compute intensity of ChatGPT, it's going to be interesting to see how and if they can make this available to small medium enterprise. They may have to limit the daily tokens and do some sort of multi-tenant solution on this, which then could lead to compliance issues because my Copilot tenant is also your one. And maybe it's learning my document stuff and your document stuff. So there could be
maybe it's
memory
giving me
sandbox.
answers.
Yeah, there could be memory sandbox
issues.
Yeah. So if it is learning, it could be skewed by what it's learning from yours. It may not share your information with me, but maybe it gets skewed. So who knows really with small medium enterprise if this thing is going to be available, and if it is it going to work? Is it going to be the same? And Alan's point about the training, like if you think about the one market that's not good at training, it's probably small medium enterprise. And that prompt engineering, because that's what it is, it's prompt engineering. If anyone's not understood that yet, go onto bing.com/create and tell it that you want to create a picture. Just a very brief description. Then start adding detail to that description, saying, okay, I want an old house, I want some birds, I want some snow, I want some sunset, and watch how your prompt engineers that result. And it really requires an understanding of what it is you're trying to do, what it is you're trying to solve, what the problem is, to be able to create the prompt. And if that's what it's going to require in Azure, then you're going to have some basics of Azure to begin with. So it's not going to be, oh, I can take this and learn Azure from nothing.
Yeah, like, I mean, if you go give me a bicep file that creates a storage account, we all know that that's going to give you not a very good storage account. That's going to raise a whole load of red flags, right? So you're going to need to tell it everything else that goes with it. And if you're already doing that, or you already know you need to do that, why would you?
What is Copilot then?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're talking about prompt engineering, and that's something I've been thinking about for a while. And, going back to your Google food comment, Aidan, I encourage new consultants and new people to the cloud, new people to tech in general, to learn how to search for, assess, curate information using search engines, because none of us can know everything. So you're going to need to know how and where to find information. So prompt engineering sounds like it's just an extension of good Google search engine skills, right?
It's natural language version of it.
Yeah.
So it should be easier if you were able to give a more more precise description of what it is you're after or you're trying to solve. But then you think about it, we see it in various different conversations. There could be things where this is able to operate at scale. So you could say, right, have a look at my tenant. Maybe I have a lot of subscriptions and I have a lot of resources, and I don't want to write a graph query to figure out a simple thing. Just tell me. Maybe it's going to be good at that sort of work. Just tell me when this happens. Create an alert for me when this happens across my environment, and it goes.
I mean, that would be nice. I mean, I'd love to see it be able to, for example, create. Because if you start with a whole load of resources on Azure Monitor, blank, you've got to build up whatever your resource alerts are, etc. Right? So,
can you write the KQL for me? Because
no one can.
Yeah. How many times have we all ended up down a rabbit hole looking for one, whatever it is, parameter switch or join context or something for a KQL query that makes it go from spitting out 0 or that red error text to, oh, here's my neat results. I think that would be a jump. But I mean, I was thinking about it from a cost perspective, right? So, give me my most expensive resources, give me cost trends and everything else. And then I realized that that's kind of already coming to cost management because they've introduced components of it with anomalies and all this kind of other stuff. And I was like, well, okay, that's kind of redundant then. And I just keep coming back to the, hang on, I need to know too much to make use of this thing that it's actually useful. So I think I need hands-on time to really kind of make a decision on.
I'll tell you,
is there a price?
I'll tell you, lads, I am refusing to get too excited about it, speaking of price, because I have the bad, sneaky feeling, because you mentioned something that really gets me angry, which is cost management.
Yeah.
And I have a funny feeling that what I'm about to say gets you angry too, Joe. And probably Alan. Which is, I suspect this thing is only going to be available initially and for quite some time to enterprise agreement customers only. So Azure Copilot. I don't think CSP customers are going to get this, or retail customers are going to get this in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I would say, well, I would hope that if they were leaning modern, it would be MCA enterprise, because at least then it has the right structure. The enterprise agreement ones are disappearing kind of quickly, but the frustration with the tiered launches is, you're correct, it's right up there, right?
And it doesn't help when you have the likes of cost management who actually have never heard of CSP.
Yeah. Oh, we're going GA with this feature. Are you?
Yeah, and it includes EA and MCA. What about CSP? Oh, CSP is MCA, isn't it? No, it's not, guys. You work for Microsoft. You should know that.
Yeah, it's a never-ending frustration, I feel, to be honest. I don't really understand why either. The feature set's identical. There's two technical differences, and everything else is identical. I don't really get why you can't work around it, but I think the guys in the cost management product group I hope they're not sick of me yet, but I mean, they've definitely heard from me several times in terms of, hang on, this feature set doesn't work. You say it does. What's the problem here? Back to the AI piece, right, before we go off again on another I think one of the things, and we were kind of leaning towards it at the start, Carl, we were saying about, new people into kind of working with Azure. Where do we think, and it kind of maybe neatly brings us on to the next one, which is, AI and consultant kind of work. Do we think that this is starting to impact, consultancy work? Do we think it's starting to make it easier? Do we think it's starting to add more bluffers maybe to the industry? Like, how are you guys finding it day to day?
Hang on, can you say that last statement? Can you say that last bit about bluffers again? Because I think that's what this will do.
Yeah, is it adding bluffers? And by bluffers, for anyone who's maybe not Irish, I mean people who say they are good at something, but they're really not, right? They're telling you
for everybody else.
Yes, what they're doing, but actually they're using, I don't know, ChatGPT to guide them and tell them how Azure is good for September 2021. Yeah, right. Someone who has to YouTube how to fix a radiator before they fix the radiator. You don't really want them in your house. Oh no, we're fine to do that. I'm fine doing that.
If it's your own one, it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not my.
How do I bleed a radiator?
Someone. Yeah, I'm not charging someone how to bleed a radiator, but I'm also, I'm okay with charging someone on how to build an Azure firewall because I know what I'm doing. But if you're Googling or AI prompting how to build Azure firewall, I'd be a little bit concerned. I don't know. Is that
hang on. So yes, there's the bluffers thing, but we're all, if the four of us sit here and tell all 10 people that are watching this that we don't Google stuff, that's a lie.
That's a lie too.
So where's that line between?
We have a foundation.
I never use Google. Perfect memory. No. I mean, you use it like it's all the time. Right?
Remind me never to work with Drew Carlisle.
You have to. Like you can't not use it, right? Because You just can't retain.
So where's the line then? Where's the line between and?
I think that the trick is for those of us who are kind of infrastructure type of people. There's an infrastructure element to this, and you'll find that even in the data stuff. Like I've done some stuff recently, talking to customers about data and stuff, and I was coming completely from the infrastructure side of things, worrying about performance and health and compliance and security and stuff like that. But those of us who work in that space, that is very, very relevant. If you're coming in as a nearly 50-year-old guy who's worked with Windows and deployment and recently networking and all that stuff, I'm going to say, right, I'm going to train your ML. Yeah. A quick look at my LinkedIn profile will tell you I'm not going to train your ML. But the other side of the coin is everybody, unless you work for OpenAI or a certain couple of teams in Microsoft, everyone working in Azure and AI is basically new to this stuff. We're all in the same space. We're all, if we have the opportunity to play with Azure OpenAI, we're coming in and we're reading the limited publicly available documentation, and if we have the opportunity, we'll play with it and we'll go, that's interesting. And that's where we are right now. I've had a couple of conversations with customers, and I can share what I know because I have played with it. But we're as consultants, and even as a sysadmin, if you were a sysadmin that does stuff internally rather than hiring consultants, you're always going to have this new thing that comes along, and you know what? You're the same space as everyone else, and it's just we're going to figure this thing out.
You've got to learn it.
Yeah. Got to figure this thing out, and the best time to figure something out is when it's new and there aren't 10,000 pages of documents with 8,000 of them being out of date and pointing at things that no longer are true.
Yeah. Or you find a blog from a peer who has exactly what you're looking to do, but the blog is 2 years old, and it is not the same way anymore. So you're like, this is exactly what I needed. If I needed this 24 months ago, damn it. I am to
copy and paste of the same PowerShell code that never worked in the first place.
Yeah.
And I have read those articles relatively recently where, hang on, did that ever work? It's like,
how did that work? Do you think it helps make the job, so outside of the bluffers or outside of the, being, it's kind of like Google Plus, but no, that was a social network, advanced Google, right? Maybe the AI part is. Do you think it makes the job day to day easier then for those who are actually doing it, right? So do you think is there any AI service there that will help you do the job? I know we talked about Copilot and who knows what that kind of ultimately will do for us, but do you think that it will help at all? Like, because on my example that I have in my head here is GitHub Copilot, right?
Yes, infrastructure code and stuff like that. Does it help you with the foundation?
Where that has helped, that for me is the perfect example of, it can give you a head start or it can give you a jump start maybe, but if you don't know what you're doing, most of what comes out of it, you're changing little bits all the time, right? Or you have to move around where the properties sit and all that kind of stuff that it kind of spits it out wrong for Bicep. But that, I think, is the only part of it that helps me at the moment. I don't see much of it, much else helping.
It's speeding up the repetitive work for you, but you still have to have the inside knowledge going, right? If I'm creating this storage account, I need to have the firewall configured. I need to have the relevant service endpoint enabled on the subnet, etc. And if I don't know that stuff, I could be just deploying out a storage account with a public endpoint and I'm putting, important data in there, health data or whatever it is, and I'm going to end up in the news for all the wrong reasons, or at the wrong end of a lawsuit. So you'd still need to have that human control. I've watched a couple of LinkedIn learning things about ChatGPT and OpenAI stuff, and they keep saying, this stuff, it's helpful, but you still have to be in control. And Microsoft very strategically called it co-pilot, not pilots. So I'm wondering in these early days, in this hype cycle, how much time are we going to shift from writing to reviewing? And if you're like me, do you get bored of reviewing very, very quickly and start skimming and not paying attention to the detail
which
you
is a
should
risk,
be paying
right?
attention to?
Yeah, I mean,
if you created it from scratch, so I am worried that we're going to need another AI now to scan the AI that generated all this code, and then we're going to need another AI to scan it all for compliance and understand the compliance and the security and the dumb stuff.
When does it
then someone's got to review that?
When does it become quicker to write it yourself than just review what Copilot wrote for you?
Doom and gloom.
I don't know, actually, to be honest. Because I mean, I find sometimes, like, that if you're familiar with using it, but as you're typing and it's prompting stuff, sometimes it's more of a distraction. And I'm like, you know what, stop doing that. I don't mind when it gives me a big chunk. So if I, comment and say, a storage account, or again, something simple, a network interface, and it goes, blah, here's the resource and the basics. Fine, I can take that, fill in the bits I need and move on. But prompt line by line, I find it kind of interfering more than anything else. And I find there is a point, I think, where you're kind of going, I don't need you to be doing this, I know this. But I think maybe it's the large scale stuff, or maybe, because I don't believe it's good at the very, very complex stuff. Where you have to figure it out, you need to actually have it in your brain to understand, which is what the interconnects or dependencies are and all that kind of other stuff. I don't think it has that level of intelligence or dependency analytics. But for the spit this out for me, spit that out for me, spit this out for me, I think maybe there's a productivity boost there. I know the numbers are outrageous. I think if you look at the Copilot numbers for GitHub, the productivity boosts are they 40 or 60% or something like that that's advertised. And I know they're, as I said, advertised, but there has to be some data behind that to say it publicly. So I mean, that's impressive.
If it's valid, it is.
One of us are devs, so we know devs do nothing anyway most days. So
quite bad insecure code.
It does seem to be a big hit in the dev space from what I've read about it. Trying to get some of our guys internally who are doing development work to use it a bit more, just to see firsthand how they find it. And the little bit I do, I found it useful. But it's very much branded as an assistant programmer. Again, it's there to help you. It's a second opinion. You're working on something, you're trying to debug some code. You want to ask a colleague, can you help me here? It's a quicker way to say, well, look, have a look at this code. Where am I going wrong here? Or where's the bug in this? But you have to give it context again. And sometimes it will even ask you, I need to know what that's referencing, and you have to kind of paste it in or point it to it. So there's work involved. But again, for big complex programs, I think, and applications, I think it could be very useful. For small snippets of code, might give you a pointer, but again, it's probably something you could Google anyway, so it might be slightly more efficient.
Let me drag this back to Azure for a second. So I said earlier I was playing with Azure OpenAI, and one of the things I decided to do while I was sitting waiting for my tires to be replaced, I decided to download house sale information from Ireland. Always an interesting topic of conversation locally. And
price index.
Okay. How much houses sold for, or an apartment sold for, because it's publicly available. It's a simple, spreadsheet, line by line, what each property sold for, brief description, the address, and stuff like that. And took that, managed to figure out how to get it into OpenAI, because that's a bit of an ordeal. You can't just give it a big, massive wad of data and say, here you go. You've got to give it little teeny tiny chunks. It's good at consuming lots of teeny tiny chunks of data. So a bit of manipulation work that had to be done there, get the data into it. I started asking it questions. And this thing, you realize that artificial intelligence is good at handling and searching large amounts of data, but it has no context. And that's what brought me up. I think it was Joe said the word context, or maybe it was Alan, sorry. It's like, this thing doesn't understand what it's reading. It has no intelligence to it, really. It's very good. If you look into how this stuff works, it basically assigns a number to every word, and there's all sorts of measurements about those numbers, and it uses that to basically correlate and search. That's what it is. There's no actual understanding. And I was like, okay, tell me what was the most expensive property. And it's like, I
It's funny you go through this, right? Because I did a couple of basic Python demos for OpenAI, right? With internally and with some clients where take rough, like embarrassing to publish Python, right? But it does what it's meant to do, which is essentially interact with the API. And I had one for SQL tables. And if you build an Azure SQL database in the portal or whatever, there is a sample database you can use.
Yeah.
Or sample. Yeah, I can't remember what it's called now, but it's from one of the Microsoft divisions. Yeah, it's Contasso, and it's a whole load of data's in there, like everything else. So it's very, very handy for something like this. Spin it up, basic tier, and then you point your OpenAI at it, right, with Python. It hadn't a clue. And I mean, I was using a Python library for SQL ingestion, right? So it brings the table in as a table. So it knows that it has a relative structure and it knows what it is, right? And the ask was very straightforward. Something like that: give me the most expensive product, or give me the customer who ordered the most products.
Average or something, or
the top right. 5. That's a join of 2 tables. And what it would do, you'd run it in verbose, right? So it would spit out the outputs. I might actually stick this up my GitHub just so someone else can believe me with this. It runs the outputs right in verbose, so you can see it figure out its logic. So it goes, okay, I'm going to have to get all the products. I'm going to have to get their prices. That looks like these 2 columns. I'm going to have to get all the customers and their ID. That looks like these 2 columns. And I can join those later and then come back and say, customer this, product this, right? And it would kind of do it, as in, I would say 3, maybe 4 times out of 5, it might get it close. It wasn't right, but it was close. But then the part that was worrying me, and I had the parameters set correctly, right? So no creativity. Don't be creative here. I'm looking for you to basically do an input-output job. It would then, for some reason, add another query and go, the average price of product Y was this. And I'd go, where have you got that from? I didn't ask for that. Why is that being done? And it's chewing up tokens doing it because it's ingesting a table to spit this out. I go, hang on a second. Where's, everyone is going, oh, Skynet. That's all this is. And all of a sudden it spits back something it wasn't asked for. And I'm kind of going, hang on a second. Your top P and everything, there's no creativity here. Where have you got that from? Which was a little bit frustrating. What I did like on the demo stuff that I did was the document summary stuff. I really like that because some of the documents that you might end up with are nonsense, and that's really useful for some. Is the ability someone sends you a really long document or a very long email, and you say, here, summarize this for me, will you please? Or give me the top 5 points from this. I found that to be quite accurate, and I don't know whether that's because it's the ability to ingest and output language.
Yeah, that's what it's good at.
Yeah, as opposed to maybe data or something a little bit more specific.
That's what I found.
Yeah, the summarization thing was really good, but the SQL queries maybe not so much. But then I was thinking, hang on, is this what it's for? Is this just this isn't a real proper use case, right? Because we mentioned earlier on about Azure, all of these mature cognitive services. I think they're all called Azure AI services now, where we should be using something that's a bit more specific for the task. So why are we trying to do generative AI against an SQL database? Well, the model is going to be messy anyway. I think you mentioned ML earlier, Aidan, right? If I'm looking for patterns in the property price index data, should I not train that data set into a model that allows me to then have simple asks from it? So actually do the lifting part with a model or an AI service that's towards what you're trying to do, rather than ask generative AI to do 15 things. At the end, just say, interpret my natural language request, get it from that data that's very simple for you to understand, and give me that back, rather than go and interpret and break out that data into a trained model of inferred patterns and then give me the answer back. I think I've had this with a few clients as well. We're getting caught in this. Actually, ChatGPT can do everything. Just point everything at ChatGPT, let it figure it all out, spit it back. There's an outside chance maybe you can do it, but geez, the token cost for that alone is going to be crazy, and the output and
what it's good at is telling you what's in the data, not understanding and interpreting the data. Like you said, if there's a document, it can summarize that really well for you. So in the example I was trying to work on, what I needed was something like an ML that would come in, look at the data, figure out the patterns, and then add raw content. No, not raw content, but prepared content with information about averages, top this, top that, lowest this, lowest that. That OpenAI could then ingest and learn, and then could be queried about. Because a lot of the queries I was asking, it basically came back and said, that information is not in your data. And I was like, but it kind of is, because if I had this open in Excel, I could actually figure that out. But it's just ChatGPT isn't a figure it out engine. It's a, let me see the amount of text you've got, and I can interpret the text and come back with it in a summarized form. Or I can regurgitate it or something like that. Or if you give me a format, I can present it in that format.
Yeah, I think, well, sorry, actually, to round out the consultant part, right, because just conscious of time as well. None of us are concerned that this is a job replacer for us, right? This thing is not going to... Yet. Yeah, because I think that's a concern for some people, right?
When Skynet takes over, maybe, but you know.
At the moment, if Skynet's going to nuke something, it'll be Mars.
Yeah,
it's not good at numbers.
When Skynet takes over, we'll have other stuff to worry about, right? Sorry, Joe.
See that phrase, other stuff to worry about. It's the same when someone says, "So what happens if North Europe goes down?" I'm like, "That you see, lads, hang on, there'll be loads. There'll be a much bigger problem."
These are your concerns,
we'll have much bigger problems.
Yeah. Calm down, it'll be fine. You won't be worried about what else is coming up. Right, let's move on to before we get completely into disaster kind of concepts. What have we got next? Default outbound access.
Speaking of disasters.
Yes. We're like on top. On say the top 10 changes.
This is number one for I think a lot of organizations. Yeah, I think especially for organizations who haven't taken the structured approach to networking, and I know we didn't want to take this to be a networking session, but this is a networking topic, and it's going to impact people in ways they may not have anticipated. But for those of us who've been doing structured networking, like the way you would have been, Joe, the way I have, and I only say that because I see you ask a lot of the same questions as me, and that won't impact us probably, or our customers that we've been working with recently. But I know there's an awful lot of people out there who next their way through Azure, and it's not any one particular sector, vertical, whatever it is. It's just the way it is. You'll have developers in large enterprises going next. You'll have sysadmins and small businesses going next.
Yeah,
they're going to be impacted.
That's tech for years.
It's
right?
just
next.
It's just the way they do. That's how they set up their VCR back in the day. It's how they, they set up their TV or their Apple TV or whatever it is today. They next. Not that I don't, but at least in Azure I don't. Those are the ones that are going to be impacted here because, and I when this was first announced, I started asking questions and I had a one-to-one conversation with the program manager who's kind of leading this. And she said, listen, the motivation here is quite simple. This is security. If you look at any security recommendations in the last few years from entities outside of Microsoft, like the FBI, for example, if you want to stop an advanced persistent threat from taking over your network, so ransomware, the way you do that is you control outbound access to the internet. Yeah. Because if you're controlling outbound access to the internet, so you're blocking by default, that thing can't talk to its botnet or to its manager.
Can't talk home.
Yeah, so it can't receive instructions. So once it gets in, it's able to do a limited amount, but most APTs are actually manually driven. That's how they sneak around your network. They're not a fully automated process like they were in the early days, because that generates noise that SIEM solutions can find. These things are manually driven. Find the valuable assets, sneak around, start encrypting, backups and stuff like that, and then start spreading out. Of course, steal all the information so it can be sold in the darknet, whether you pay or not. So taking control of that outbound access was the primary motivation. This is not a money-making exercise for Azure, for Microsoft. This is probably going to generate more heat and flack for them and support calls than they'll make revenue on.
I'm conscious, right, as you're talking there, that maybe we jumped straight into it because we all know what it is. Carl, you stuck this on the list. Do you want to just give a brief of what the current situation is and what the change is? So maybe it makes a bit more context or maybe more sense about why this is good, bad, or indifferent.
So in the slightly old world, and when you're running stuff in Azure in a network, you didn't have to assign it a public IP address or a NAT gateway or whatever for it to get internet access, right? The default outbound access would have just routed its way through the Azure networks and out through a semi-random public IP address, right? So moving forward, the retiring of default outbound access means that you must have a public IP address on your resource, or you must have a NAT gateway, or a route table to a firewall or whatever, just to be able to be getting internet access. So that's the default allowing of internet access for resources inside of a subnet with no further configuration is gone, or will be gone.
You know what I find the most surprising about this? Since ARM was introduced, so 7 years, 8 years, give or take, that this still surprises people that default outbound is full internet when you build a VM.
Yep.
And I would say it's pretty rare to come across an environment that has 0 VMs. It might be the primary compute, but there's nearly always some somewhere. And the fact that this is still such a client who's maybe not using a whole lot of Azure, or someone who's not 100% familiar with it all day, every day, and they're like, oh no, it's fine, sure, I didn't give it internet access, or I didn't give it a public IP, and you're like, nah, doesn't do it. It's full internet, you can do it at once. The fact that was still like not widely known, and I don't know, is that like a documentation issue? Is that I don't know, but like that still surprises me that people don't know that it has full internet. Because
it's an assumption thing.
Yeah, I mean,
it's an assumption thing, and people have learned the laws of physics of the physical network.
Yeah.
But they don't realize the laws of physics in a software-defined network are different.
Yeah, I think that's where some of the challenges, where they're kind of like, well, it doesn't do it on-prem. And I'm like, how's that relevant? We're not on-prem.
It's taking your assumptions into the cloud, and that's what this is combating, right? I mean, you said it, Aidan. This is security. I mean,
what's the preference? So, like, maybe it is security, maybe it's not a cost play, right? But for you guys, what would be your preference, right? So you come in now, you have to give it a default method, or you have to give it a method, because maybe your environment is complex enough to require a few. What would be your chosen outbound access method? We're probably in all very similar, but I mean,
I would hope so. My preference will always be a route one way or another, because there's different ways of doing a route. But a default route to quad 0, 0.0.0.0/0, for those of us who don't use the insider language, with an X-top of virtual appliance, which is the private IP address of a firewall. And that firewall then has a public IP address and can egress securely to the internet. And it blocks everything by default.
Yep. Simply throwing a NAT gateway on your VNet doesn't actually solve the security problem. It just gets around the fact that now you've got new default outbound access because you throw a NAT gateway in there.
And there's an interesting gotcha with that NAT gateway. If you've done your AS 700 exam, you probably realize about a third of it isn't a NAT gateway. And there's a nasty scenario it throws at you straight from the Learn documentation, which is NAT gateway across multiple availability zones. Because NAT gateway is not zonal. It is zonal. It is zonal.
Multi-zone.
It's not zone resilient. So if you are using 3 availability zones, you have to have 3 NAT gateways.
Which I don't even think you could do, right? Because your virtual network is zone resilient.
Now you need multiple subnets.
Because you can only attach one per subnet, right? So
I would love to see it be a bit more. I don't think it needs to be a standalone resource. I think I blogged about that before, or something, maybe for back to school. I don't see it being. I don't know why it's a standalone resource. Like, this should be something a little bit more like service endpoints or something like that for me. It's just built into the virtual network.
Very little configuration in it, isn't there? It's
like how it stands out.
Turn it on, give it some IP addresses, and attach it, and that's it.
And then I think it adds more confusion to, say, Azure Firewall, that you can tie them together to help with SNAT scale. And I'm kind of going, I don't really like this. I really want to see this all just fixed in one way, shape, or form, which is like, I will turn on the NAT gateway feature for subnets as I need to, and it'll just be exactly the same level of resiliency as a virtual network based on the PIP. So the PIP should be zone resilient, which standard pips can be, right? And then with Azure Firewall, it shouldn't be a thing you can add into it. It should be another feature you can turn on there, and that fixes your outbound default for Azure Firewall as well. It's kind of, I'm like, why is the stuff over here buzzing about? Just shove it into the stuff that makes sense and fix the other small problems. Like it's like, where did I run into it recently that I didn't like it? Oh, I hadn't seen it in years, and it confused me for a good, I don't know, 30 minutes, because I was like, what is going on here? Because it was a networking issue. Internal standard load balancer attached to 2 VMs right across zones, no outbound access, kills it because it has no pip root, or it has no external pip root, and it's documented, right? But again, as I said, I don't need to Google stuff, Carl, right? So I was sitting there going, why is this not working? Why can I not get to the internet? I have no roots. There's nothing here. And when it's a network issue, you're like, it's Azure. Azure's the problem here, not me.
Something weird is happening.
Yeah. I'll just delete it all and build it again. And then I discovered this outbound, and it was like, attach a NAT gateway to the subnet that your VMs are in to facilitate outbound. And I was going, here we go again, buzzing around over here somewhere for a solution when it should be a little bit more straightforward. And that was just it was a weird kind of UAT environment, right? So that's why there was no actual core default outbound. But it was I find it a bit funny. So I'm glad none of us were like, that gateway is the solution. Almost not
it doesn't get
it over here somewhere.
It's useful when it's required, but A, it's not always required, and B, it doesn't actually solve the problem that we're solving for by retiring default outbound access, right?
No.
For me, NAT gateway, I've never deployed it in production. It's a niche thing where there was a scenario I thought I was going to end up using it, and luckily enough, the developers were really good at making their outbound connections with their code, so I didn't have a port issue or a snap.
I think I have it in one environment, and I can't remember what it's for. I think it's to do with I think it's Azure Firewall SNAP. And the firewall has 4 or 5 IPs, and that was an issue, I think.
I see it a little bit when a customer doesn't want to pay for a firewall and they need a static IP to route out through. So rather than having IPs,
not even basic. I know basic is more expensive, but they wouldn't even be convinced for that.
No.
Yeah.
No, won't go for
even just a Linux VM doing SNAP, which is once you actually find the 3 commands you need, it's really good, and it's low cost. Like a B2 VM probably do. I mean, even a B1 would actually do it. It'd be better than the NAT gateway. I find the NAT gateway is a bit of a tricky beast.
I wonder how many environments this is going to take down. When they deprecate this, what's the date? The date is it the end of 24, or is it later again?
25, September 25, isn't it?
Yeah. Like, is this going to be kind of like a D-Day? I'm trying to think of
it does have that Y2K feel about it,
doesn't it?
Yeah, and I have a funny feeling it's the biggest customers who are going to be affected. And you know what? I would almost put money down that some Azure service or some Office 365 service will go down because of this.
I'd say there's a chance, right? Because I mean, we know when there's like a really broad change. I'm trying to think of an equivalent. Maybe the classic retirement, when they started retiring classic resources and kept pushing it out, and then they adopted them into ARM, even though they weren't meant to, and pushing it out again and stuff. There's one coming, actually, isn't there? There's one coming.
Is it cloud service? Has that gone yet?
There's one coming soon, I think at the start of January. But the
basic IPs are going as well. Might be that. That's not happening.
Yeah, maybe that might have been one of them as well. But I have a funny feeling that this is going to be one of those sort of chaotic.
The bit I don't like about it is they've kind of the wording on it is like, existing VMs won't be affected, but they will at some point, because even if you deallocate a VM, it's never going to get it. It's never going to get an implicit IP address again. That's gone.
Yeah, and even
or if you restore from backup or whatever.
You restore it from backup. You do a disaster recovery failover or failback. It's a new VM, and a lot of people aren't going to think of it that way. Yeah, and then the follow up is like, eventually they're actually just going to turn this off completely.
I think it could be more subtle, because are any of you familiar with how and when they allocate and deallocate the dynamic pips for the regions? Like, if you have a VM, it's active 24/7. That's not a static IP on that. there is a point in time where it
changes.
Yeah. So
yeah, that's a good question.
It's not documented.
The other scenario where people are gonna get stung with this, and this is why I think the big guys, is VM scale sets. As those things grow, there's other new instances and go down again. Like what's the
half the scale set works. You scale out, the rest of it doesn't. It scales back in, and who knows what.
There's one of your weird networking problems, Joe.
No, pass.
The flips
Again, someone says I'm using a scale set, I say it's your own fault. Sorry.
Yeah, and then if the things across different availability, so there's so many variables in here, and you wonder, right? Have they thought of all the variables? And I know some of the people who are involved in this. I know they're bloody clever people. Like you ever get to sit and talk with these people face to face, whether it's Teams or whatever, you realize these people are smarter than I am. There's no doubt about that, but there's so many combinations of scenarios that they can't consider everything. And with all this software defined stuff, and you can give, there's going to be naysayers about the cloud out there. There's never going to be any pleasing them, and they're always going to be right about something. But even a blind squirrel can find a nut once in a while. I think there's going to be something happens, and it's going to generate a lot of headlines. The register is going to have a bit of fun with it, with some sarcastic headlines, and there'll be some X comments with people trying to become comedian of the day.
I think it'll be. I do think it's going to be a sneaky issue, and I mean because it's so far away in terms of announcement.
It's going to creep up on us, right?
Yeah. So it's. I was going to say it's simultaneously it's not for 2 years, and then all of a sudden it's in 3 weeks. Whoops. Where is this even going to impact me?
See, that's when you go to your Copilot for Azure and say, "Hey, Copilot for Azure, which of my VMs are affected by this?"
What is a VM, Aidan? Yeah, I mean, it's going to be.
Well, that's another good question. What is a VM? Well, everything's a VM. So, is the stuff in the platform also affected?
Abstraction.
I would presume there's going to be a whole load of. Maybe that's the timeline. Is that okay? All of that stuff that has compute underneath the hood, I'm trying to think of something that has a default.
Everything has VMs. Absolutely everything, unless you're running on physical with some of the special SAP stuff or VMware.
Say like a virtual network gateway. There's compute under the hood, or an app gateway, but that has a PIP if you give it one.
So but think of other things like your app services or any of the compute that functions are running on.
Yes, functions are
so-called serverless computing. Everything under the covers is a VM.
And they're all going to chat out because they all have to. So
because they have to talk to the control plane. Anyone who's done any NSG work or any firewall work knows that there is a control plane. And these things have to be able to communicate to the control plane.
Yeah. I mean, if we start now, maybe it'll be okay. Maybe. What have we got next on the list, Carl? Or do we want to jump to maybe...
Do we want to
grind gears, round out
mention
questions?
Yeah, I think we've got about 5 minutes and then I have a client call. So do you want to quickly chat about Ignite for a couple of minutes and then we'll do grinding your gears?
Did anyone go?
No.
Anyone there in person? I don't remember seeing
not even virtually because it was too busy.
No, I have a bunch of stuff marked, but I read through the book of news, which I always kind of do first anyway. And then
marketing book of news.
Yeah, and then
it's all AI. It was 95% AI.
Do you know what?
But that thing is written for the stock market. It's not.
You know what I did like though? I did like
people.
That the feedback from people who went last year. So I couldn't go in person last year, and the feedback in comparison this year is positive. I think the progression is positive, is really, really important, because I really don't think we'll get the likes of Orlando back. Aidan, I know we've been there. I don't know, Carl or Alan, if you ever made it to one of those ones.
No.
Like the full week, 30,000-40,000 people wandering around the convention center with the biggest rooms you've ever seen in your life. I don't know if we get that back, but I'd really love to see the return of a 3-ish day in-person technical conference. I think the value is massive.
Based on what I've heard, there is an internal battle to win the soul of Ignite back.
Yeah.
The problem is the focus of a lot of this public presence isn't you, me, or the customer. It's the stock value of the company. And there's also a lot of egos to be stroked. So there's vice presidents who want to talk about technical content that they manage. And they have overproduced videos that literally just show us headlines that we can see in our RSS feeds.
Yeah.
And it's like Carl said it earlier, the book of news was all AI. Who's that for? That's for the stock market. That's for the CFO to make her job easier.
I like the banner.
Sorry. I just quickly switched
straight into it
because it seems like we've now traversed into.
I had one last thing for you though. If there was an Ignite, the tour, or an Ignite local type of thing now post event, so either in UK, Ireland, somewhere in Europe, whatever, would you guys go? Would you go for the community, the networking element of it alone rather than the content? Would you be interested?
The content has to be good. I think
proper
that's the problem.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
And unfortunately, we know Microsoft Ireland is not interested in anything to do with community. I'm sure in the next year or two, somebody's going to have a measurable or a KPI to engage with the MVPs, buy them a pizza, and tell them you're going to engage with them, and then never do. But I know there's other countries that do a really good job at engaging through community and sponsoring. You see that in the lowlands countries, for example. They're really good at engaging with the user groups.
It's weird because the subs all get, in theory, the same budget, as in like nothing.
Yeah, but
for community.
There's some of them who only care about their sales pipeline, not to
it's annoying.
Talk about someone that's very close to, or used to be close to your old office.
It's annoying, to be honest, because I mean we see that value across the board. In terms of grinding gears, does anyone, Al, do you have anything that's kind of bugging you on Azure lately? Call it out. Be mean.
Not so much on Azure, I'd say. I've seen a hell of a lot of customers lock themselves out of tenants recently by trying to be more secure and apply zero trust and conditional access policies and do things like turn on phishing resistant MFA and then, I forgot to actually set it up first before I enabled that policy. So just people not thinking things through properly and testing things before they turn on and not having break glass accounts, and, the basics. Azure-wise, the stuff we spoke about before, some of that stuff still hasn't come. Been able to troubleshoot paths, network resources, and things like that. We've been asking for a while, but we won't go down that road. It'll take too long.
Carl?
VNet flow logs may help.
Yeah, so, and I need to drop in a second, but the usual one we have each year is being able to select the public IP address for outbound traffic through your firewall.
I don't know. I don't get that one. I don't know. Not that I don't get you saying it. I just don't get why it's not done.
I mean, the enterprise firewalls can do it, so
I mean, anything can do it. A standard load balancer can do it.
Yeah.
Like and that's what's under the hood. I mean, if you go talk to people, right, that's what's doing a whole lot of that work. It's that one really bugs me. That I just don't understand where it is in the roadmap and why it keeps dropping down in terms of priority.
It's the anger I can see, I can sense it.
It just boils up. It's like, just do this, will you please? It'll take you 10 minutes. Right, we have to leave there because of time. Can you put that Just Giving link up, Carl, again? Just to remind those that are still here, if you can donate whatever you can, much appreciated. And thanks again to the guys for organizing Festive Tech. Thanks to my fellow peers for doing another AMA this year. That was fantastic. As always, like I said, a few tangents, but I think we kind of half kept it on track. But yeah, make sure you're watching the rest of the content for the rest of the month, and hopefully I'll talk to all of you soon. Maybe.
See you later.
Yeah. See you guys.
Bye all.
Have a good day.